Calling to
Recording in progress.
the regular meeting of the Operations Oversight Committee. And your mic's not on. See, do we do the roll call first?
Okay, thank you, Chair Harris. This meeting is being conducted virtually and in person, so I will do a roll call of the trustees to confirm attendance. Trustee Ginsburg will not be participating in today's meeting. Ms. Durazo? Present. Ms. Langton? Present. Mr. Rue? Ms. Fessler? Present. Mr. Oakham? Mr. Green? Mr. Robbins? Mr. Moore?
Here.
Mr. Kehoe? Chair Harris?
Here.
Staff participating in the meeting include Deputy CEO Louis Lugo, AEOs JJ Popowich and Laura Guglielmo, Chief Counsel Stephen Rice, and from Benefits, Fabio Ramirez. Others trustees, please use the raise your hand Zoom option to be placed in queue. At this time, we ask all meeting participants to mute your mics until you are ready to speak, and we may now proceed with the agenda. And there were no requests received for teleconference meeting attendance under AB 2449.
Very good. Thank you very much. Item number 3, approval of the minutes of the regular meeting of April 2nd. I need a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Durazo? Aye. Langton?
Aye.
Mr. Moore?
Aye.
Chair Harris?
Aye.
The motion passes unanimously.
And I have not received any requests from the public to speak, so we'll go right into reports. LACERA operations briefing.
Committee Chair Moore, I just stand for questions with respect to the briefing.
Very good. Any questions from anyone on the committee? Excellent. Thank you. Good report. It's kind of like. Down to B, policy governing deductions for dues and similar assessments implementation project update.
Good afternoon, trustees. As promised, we're here to give you an update on the project. This afternoon, I'd like to introduce Fabio Ramirez, who is our supervisor in our account maintenance unit in our benefits division. And Fabio is the project lead for this particular project to implement the new policy dues and deductions policy. So, Fabio, if you're ready. Here, there you go.
All right.
He's going to give you an update.
I guess I'm ready. Of course, good afternoon. And like JJ mentioned, my name is Fabio Ramirez, and I am overseeing the agency deduction project that's taking place at this time. What I wanted to, of course, share with you all today is have a informative discussion in terms of what our project plan is for this project. As we all know, in March, the board implemented the new policy for the agency deductions, their dues and assessments. And with doing so, on our end, we're really strongly going to be focusing on the compliance aspect of it, right? Now, our goal is to essentially contact and reach out our 34 partnered agencies at this time. And of course, it's going to be the intention is to roll it out in phases. Of course, 34 agencies it's not a small task. Within those 34 agencies, we're looking at about 37,000 agency deductions that are actually taking place every month, right? So in terms of information and data exchange, we do want to be cautious. We want to be meticulous in terms of how we approach it, with starting with the smaller agencies first, right? Once we assess that information and gather as much data as possible, the goal is to essentially move on to mid-size, of course, and then the larger agencies after. Now, as far as data intake, 37,000 agency deduction authorization forms are quite a large number. But like I mentioned earlier, if we take it in phases and we take this in small batches, we feel like it would be a manageable task, right? Now, in order to do this, we actually partnered with our systems department. They were a huge help to create a master site for our agencies to actually be able to provide us this piece of documentation. Now, it's a master site that allows each agency to have their own specific site. It's multi-factor authentication. It's individualized, and of course, more than anything, it's secured and it's housed by LACERA. So we're giving our agencies the option to utilize this site. Of course, we'd love for all of them to utilize it, but the truth is, at this time, it's more so it's a discovery phase, right? We would assume that our agencies are going to be accepting of this new process that we're going to implement, and they work with us. Now, there's going to be a strong focus with collaboration, of course, when it comes to this. Of course, our values as a whole are on the table here. We're dealing with 34 different agencies, 34 different identities, and we understand that collaboration at this point is one of the key things, because we're not sure what they're going to say. Some agencies work off email, some still fax information to us, some will send us Word documents, right? Others PDFs. So with this new master site, we have the opportunity to truly control the inflow of data to data input and of course outflow, and house it within LACERA, right? So the master site is created. A small side note on that, there is also a merger that's taking place between Southern California Credit Union and the Los Angeles or LA Financial Credit Union. This merger is going to be finalized at the end of June. What's happening now as we speak is we had a meeting with them recently, informed them, of course, of the new policy, what our goal is regarding this new policy and the process, the changes in the process. We informed them about the master site. We had the opportunity to set them up, and in a very organic fashion, they were able to actually start transferring that data that we needed. So as we speak now, there's several hundred pieces of authorized documentation that we are to review at some point. Once we gather enough information regarding this and we create a baseline in terms of what type of documentation we're willing to accept or we're not willing to accept, we can essentially move forward into the mid or later phases of the project. Now, we don't want to lose sight of the collaboration aspect of it, and that's the truth, because every agency has their way of doing things. We also had the opportunity, as we all know, early on this year to onboard NACO, right? It's one of the newer agencies that we're working with through RELAX Supplemental Insurance, one of the carriers that we're in May. That kicked off roughly in January when the project was, launched, and of course, a relationship launched. We're still communicating with RELAX. I know that JJ is still, communicating with RELAX management and board. Just last week, I was speaking to one of the managers with NACO discussing process improvements. What can we do for them that would make the process easier, not just for the agencies, but of course for the members. We don't want to lose sight on the customer service aspect of things. We always want to make sure that the experience is positive for our members. So this is an ongoing process from beginning to end. We're learning as we're going to go, and that's the idea. And of course, we want to make sure we adjust, we pivot, and we're always considerate in terms of what our agencies need from us, right?
So let me jump in there real quick and add some additional context to it. So the discovery phase that Fabio mentioned is that phase where we've gone to these agencies and we're asking them to give us whatever written documentation, whatever written authorizations. And so we started that with the two credit unions, since they were already merging and we needed to go through that process with them. And so they have submitted their documentation. I know there's a question about how much time and effort this is going to take to implement. This is our first opportunity to look at how much time and effort it's going to take to evaluate what these agencies have on file and then make decisions. We're fortunate that these two particular agencies had some written authorizations on file. And so the intent is to look at those, see if they will satisfy our basic legal requirements for this process. And if they do, we'll set some ground rules on what types of written authorization that exists for current members and current deductions. And if we can accept it, then we'll just go ahead and accept it and close those out. It's a learning process, as Fabio said. So as we go through this process, we will learn from each agency and then apply improvements. On the RELAC NACO side of the house, as I mentioned in the memo, we have had some conversations with the RELAC team. And we have set up a regular cadence of meetings to meet with RELAC and NACO to improve the process, because they're the first ones that have gone through it. So they have some valuable information for us. That will include a site visit, which we're still trying to schedule with NACO, where we'll go out and look at their operations and learn from them firsthand what members are saying. I did get some feedback from the RELAC board members that I met with, and we have some proposals, as I mentioned to Trustee Fessler, that I'll be giving to her later on this week about how we can improve the process based on the feedback they've already shared with us. And then we'll move forward, and we'll keep the committee updated as we go with the progress. So with that, we'll stand for any questions.
Thank you. And I want to start by saying I really appreciate the openness to input and feedback, and a recognition that this is it is not a cookie cutter operation. It's something that deserves some thoughtful implementation. I just want to point out a couple of things. One is, credit unions really are not representative of, I don't know, I think you did send me a list, JJ, and I appreciate that, of the organizations that sponsor deductions. But credit unions are banks. I mean, you've never been able to open a bank account without a signature card and all kinds of other things. So they operate in this world from the get-go. And what they do for their own purposes. It just so happens that it folds very nicely into what LACERA is trying to accomplish. So I would caution against giving extraordinary weight or undue weight to what your experiment is with the credit union, and using that as the model for what you're going to expect or anticipate from the other 35, I guess it would be after these two merge, 35 agencies that you have to work with, because I think you're going to find a much more sophisticated approach there. The other thing that I continue to be concerned about, and I didn't hear anything today that that causes me to think the concern has been resolved, is the difference between dealing retrospectively with the 37,000 deductions you already have on file and what is going to happen prospectively in terms of enhancing and modernizing the approach that LACERA takes going forward for people that make new deductions. I continue to believe, as I said back in March, that the retroactive application of this can become not only burdensome to the staff, but really challenging for members and for the agencies that are involved. And when there's been no complaints of any consequence in 25 or 30 years, it's nearly 30 years, I guess, that the former process has been in place, and you have 37,000 now. Over that period of time, it's probably fair to say you've had 50 or 100,000 total that have been processed under the policy that was adopted in 97 or 98, whenever it was. I'm worried that that we're going to get out over our skis here, and that it may make sense to consider having a bifurcated approach here and a process that moves forward, or a standard that is higher for the process moving forward than you might apply to looking at things retroactively. You've got a different population going forward as well, a population that is more familiar with using technology. And so signing something through DocuSign or whatever is going to be a lot more common and a lot less of a freak out for somebody who's retiring right now, or who retires 5 years from now or whatever, as opposed to someone who retired 10 or 15 years ago. And so I really would urge that you keep that kind of concept in mind, because what is acceptable to all of us may be terrifying to somebody who retired in, I don't know, 2000 or 1997 or something like that, where they didn't work with computers. They weren't into that thing. And I mean, I've got relatives that don't even, they won't buy anything online because they're afraid to use their credit card online. So, I mean, they're just a different world and different expectations. So I'd urge that you keep that in mind. But I'm very grateful and appreciative of the work you've done and the responsiveness to the concerns that have been raised.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And, I recognize it's a challenge, right? And I'm not glossing over that challenge. So and that's why when we wrote this, and as I was talking to Fabio and the team, I very much am approaching it as a learning experience as we go through it. And you heard him mention several times, it's a collaborative effort. And that's because, what we've talked about is making it a true collaborative effort to make sure that each agency is treated, with respect, and we're looking at their membership and what we can do for their membership. Ultimately, once we get through the discovery phase and we find out what they do have and what they don't have, I'll have a discussion with the legal office. We'll come back, we'll inform the committee, because this is what we promised we would do, originally. And then at that particular point, we'll have a recommendation for how to move forward, and, we can debate it and discuss it. Yeah, I understand exactly what you're saying. I do have the mandate, though, to bring everything into compliance one way or another. And so it's just a matter of how we do that. My hope is that, and I understand credit unions are different, but interestingly enough, I think it was LA Financial was using the old card that we had given all the agencies many years ago. It used to be like about a quarter-page card that was a written authorization. And so it was nice to see them come back because we had given them out at some point in time. And so my hope is that more and more of the agencies, not just credit unions, will have that on file. Not all of them will. And, that we'll have to approach that, when we come to that. But first step, we figure out, what they do have, which is, that discovery phase that we're going through. We are still in discussions with systems, trying to figure out a way to streamline new applications. I'm still leaning towards trying to set up a process where whenever the agency signs somebody up, we send them a welcome email and they click on it, they come to LACERA and they register through LACERA. I think that's probably the best way to do it because it takes care of all the authentications that we need to worry about. As we go forward, this is perspective, more and more of our members will be already signed up for LACERA. Those that aren't, it's an encouragement to sign up for LACERA, and we would help them through that process. So that's what's in the back of my mind there. So we're having discussions. I've had a couple of preliminary discussions with the systems division on what that might look like. We'll finalize that and formalize that and bring that back and show you what we're working on. That's something that Trustee Harris and I had talked about a couple of months ago, right before the policy. He called me up and had some conversations about it. And I had asked him, like, well, how does RELAC, for example, sign up their new members? Go to the website, click on a button, fill out some information. That's it. I'm just paraphrasing. And they sign up. And I said, well, that's great. If we can send them a welcome email, or at the end of that process, there's a link they click and they finish it with LACERA to start the deduction for the monthly fees, membership fees. I said that would work great because we can validate who the member is. We'll know where they're coming from, so we'll be able to, set them to the right form. We can pre-populate the form because we know they're coming from a RELAC link, that type of thing. So that's what's in the back of my mind for the perspective going forward. Always trying to think, how do I make it as easy as possible on both the agency and the member, so that they can meet our requirements and move through their process quickly. So more on that to come. And the last thing, we did get a chance, it's in the memo, but I did want to highlight, Fabio did send out a survey to all the other SORL systems to ask if they do agency deductions and just to see how they do it. And so I know we got one response back.
Got a few responses
Yeah.
now. Yeah.
So we'll share that, just, a summary of that at the next update next month.
Okay, okay. I join Bobby. Thank you for all the work you've done and for taking into account our comments. Coming from County Counsel's office, I could speak for Bobby and I could speak for myself. We're pretty risk averse. So the fact that we think it's okay for you to not go forward with the 37,000 that have already gone through says a lot from this perspective, but you know, we're not your legal counsel. So, so let's talk about the database for 1 minute. Would agencies only be able to put things in, or can they look in the database to see what other agencies have provided information?
No, it's very tailored to the specific agency only. So it's
Good.
actually password secured. So for this site, the way it's built is as the agencies are onboarded onto the site, they can only access their account.
Their own.
No other accounts. Yeah.
Okay, and then they're uploading a copy of their signature cards or whatever they have.
Correct.
Okay,
We may also use the site, Trustee Langton, for distributing reports as a secure way to distribute reports. Right now, reports are emailed to most of the agencies, which is they're I believe they're encrypted.
Oh,
Yeah, they're encrypted,
great.
but yeah, it's not the best way to do that. But this is a site where we can control the access and they can pick up the reports.
mhm.
One of the other things I forgot to mention, I know you got to get out of here. We are working on a weekly report based on one of the requests that RELAC made, so that we can show them what's processed on a weekly basis, which allows them to respond quicker if there's any problems and resolve problems. So that type of thing would be available to other agencies too. And they could go there, pick up their report and do what they need to do.
Okay, and DAA stands for
Deduction
data.
Authorization
Oh,
Agreement.
Deduction Authorization Agreement. Okay, and you can't allow people to just do one sign at the bottom for the 34 agencies? I saw that people are getting frustrated because they have to do one per agency.
They do have to do one for agency because it's a written authorization for that agency. The frustration that we heard from RELAC was people are making multiple changes, right? So they have a number of different programs that they offer and people can come and go out of those or choose those options as they wish.
Because we opened the door, that's why they're making the changes, or they do it anyway?
That's their, yeah.
Okay,
There's different kinds of insurance. So
Oh.
this month I sign up for vision and dental. And then next month I want to add pet insurance or whatever it might be. And the process currently requires, or I decide I don't want dental. And I have to do a new process each time I make any kind of change.
so those are already being done with signatures.
So the frustration, I'm sorry, the frustration that they shared with us was that, you know, every time we do require a new form to be filled out with a new signature. So I talked to Trustee Fessler right before the meeting and let her know that I had some proposals for how we might be able to improve that. So I'll just share them now, if you don't mind. We are going to allow them to make changes as long as the changes are within the same category they've already made a deduction agreement for. So for example, we'll take pet insurance, travel insurance, and maybe legal services. I think all three of those are available. All three of those fall under category number 10, right? So if they've already signed up for any one of those and they want to add one of the other two, what we'll be asking NACO to do, because NACO is the one that's processing it, is to have the agent fill out the new sheet and send it to us. We'll actually give them a slightly different deduction authorization, an updated one, so that we can see that it's just a change and it's a change for the same category. That way the member won't be asked to fill out and assign a new agreement. It'll be under the same agreement. We already have the other authorization to deduct. The two reasons we put the deduction authorization agreement together was one, to meet the written authorization requirement. The second one was to know what category the deductions are coming under, right? And so as long as there is one deduction under that category, they can make many changes as they want under that category. I don't need to know specifically because I'm not asking whether it's specifically travel insurance, pet insurance, legal services. That's not something that I need to know. I just need to know it falls under that bucket of category deductions. And so allowing NACO to submit a form and just indicate this is an update, no change, adding, the same category and putting the new dollar amount, which we need to know because, yeah, we need to know that too. That would, I believe, significantly relieve some of the frustration that the members are having. So I'll write that up in a formal process and we'll share it.
You couldn't do all categories with, I mean,
No,
that just sounds
yeah.
complicated.
No, it's a good
If
question,
there's
yeah.
more than 10 categories, which it sounds like there are.
I categorized them in 3 groups, right? The first category, category 1, they're all like medical insurance. Category 2 is a hodgepodge of other things that, other than credit unions, most other agencies won't have.
Okay.
Except, well, credit unions and fees. I think fees are in that the second
But if
category.
we have a link, we could put them all on our link.
Um,
I mean, you want
Yeah.
a one-stop shop for
right.
people who are going to do it online.
We still need the written authorization. I still need to know what category they're under. And that's why it's all on the same form. So again, when we move forward for, the
Future.
future,
Mhm.
it'll be done all through my LACERA and it'll be just, some clicks and they can go.
If I might, and I raised this with you before, JJ, the only reason LACERA needs to know, with using NACO as an example, the only reason you need to know which categories it is to make it, to avoid the problem that LACERA had with PGA.
Mhm.
When LACERA chose to continue a relationship with PGA even after RELAC had severed that relationship. If LACERA makes a policy decision to sever the relationship with the supplemental insurance provider when that provider is no longer sponsored by an agency described under the statute, then you don't need to know one way or the other because the entire program goes away and there are no deductions that LACERA would be processing from NACO, from PGA, from whomever. So it was a policy decision by LACERA to choose to continue a relationship with the supplemental insurance provider even after the underlying relationship with the Retirement Association had been severed. If that policy decision were to change, it doesn't matter what category it is because you won't be pursuing a deduction. LACERA would not be taking a deduction in any event because the entire relationship would be over. So I hear what you're saying and I understand the need for it in a practical sense to address that issue, but that issue is kind of self-imposed. It's not necessary. It was a policy choice to implement the relationship in that way.
I did write into the policy that for future authorization of agencies, and we could discuss going back and reauthorizing NACO. But I did, if I remember correctly, I wrote into the policy that the board could make that a provision of the approval of the agency. So if that is something that RELAC and NACO want to pursue to make it easier, and I've got to talk this over with Steve to make sure that he's in agreement with me. We haven't had this conversation yet, so I'm not going to put him on the spot right now. But it's possible we could, you could approach us and ask, RELAC could approach us and ask, or NACO could approach us and ask to be reconsidered. I would still need the written authorization. So that's not going to go away. But we'll explore that, and we'll talk about it.
But you wouldn't need it on a continuing basis every time there was any kind of a change.
Right. It would. So in that particular case, if that was to be the case, we would default to what I just explained. You would have a form, NACO would have a form, and they would just indicate it's a change.
Right.
And it would just be the same form carried forward. But we'll explore that. I want to make sure that I wrote that in the policy. I remember writing it, but my memory is not what it used to be. So let's make sure I got that right. And then we can talk about whether we want to do that.
No further questions. Thank you. That brings us, I believe, to the agenda back up. Here we are. Items for staff review.
We have nothing,
Very good. Items for future agendas.
nothing there either.
Go to the order. Everybody did this once today. I'm good with it. I'll accept a motion to adjourn. Adjourn. Thank you.
Recording stopped.